Star Realms is a deck builder card game for 2 players with a simple adversarial plan. Assemble a deck that can attack your opponent while stopping them from effectively attacking you. You command a little space federation of dubious specific allegiance across 4 factions and spend your authority, your life, and trade, your money, encouraging the presence of members of those factions who then, to defend you, expand your territory by attacking the authority of your opponents, nibbling away on their control of their space while they do the same to you. Or maybe you win in one big explosive turn that's very cool and maybe represents some kind of violent coup. Star Realms is modeled strongly on Magic the Gathering's turn structure as people play it, but not as the comprehensive rules describe it, but with an even less interactive model. Your opponent can literally do their own thing in their own time as much as they want, and you can come find out what they did after they're done. There's none of what people like me call interactivity, where you do something and I can respond to it. I do like this as a metaphor for space combat. Space travel takes ages, because space is huge, because space sucks. Things rarely bump into each other in space. You play your cards in full, get the effect they give you, put them all in your discard, and then you draw your hand and wait for the next turn. The effects these cards give you are broadly either going to more of attacking your opponent's authority or giving you more currency to buy cards. Cards care about whether they're played with other cards of the same type, and you can sometimes junk them out of your deck entirely for special abilities. Lots of the time, your turns are made up of only 3 or 4 decisions, like the sequencing of the cards out of your hand, making this whole deck builder focused on short-term choices rather than a large, long-term sequence of strategic memorization. Cards you add to your deck won't show up until you reshuffle your deck's graveyard into it. Did I call it a graveyard? Never mind. So, as you're buying cards with useful applications, you're doing it with the knowledge that you may not see it when you want to see it. This has a great prolonging experience where you'll buy cards with a sort of generalized hope of how they work, and maybe some history or experience with what you like, but since the market is a random space and your deck is also random, when you finally get that brain world in hand, you'll throw it a little birthday party. Not that this game is lacking in long-term strategy and card valuation mastery. There are cards I will not pick up no matter what because I'd rather my opponents have to pick them up, or waste time getting rid of them. That's the kind of thing that you get when you bake this game into your brain. As for other virtues of Star Realms, it's very well delivered. If you buy the game on Steam, you can have it on other platforms at the same time. It uses a profile system that's cross-platform, so you don't need to worry about saving or transferring data. There is the problem that an unreliable connection can leave you playing the single-player or pass-around modes, which, single-player card game on your phone or computer. That's not the worst thing in the world. We got by with Solitaire in Windows for a long time. Oh, wait, pass-around mode. You might not even know what a pass-around mode is. For anyone not familiar, this means that you and a friend want to play Star Realms, but only one of you has the game, as with the card game. So you can start the game on your phone, play your turn, then hand it to your friend for their turn, and so on. This sounds like a really simple addition, but so many games of this type don't give you that opportunity, because, that's a lost sale. It's great as a way to share this game and shows in my mind the importance of approaching these games from a philosophy of material play. That is, the game you get in cards is the same as the game you get on your phone. If you're interested in seeing how physical and digital card games can be these days based on single purchases rather than big, sprawling microtransaction-based experiences like Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone, then Star Realms is a really great introduction to modern card game forms. I say modern, Star Realms is like 12 years old. It's also a bit more handleable than those other games. With only a few playthroughs of the game, you'll know generally what most of the cards do, and even if you don't remember what your opponents are taking, you'll have a generally robust of what kinds of things they're going to do to you, just based on the colors they've picked up. See, look, I really like Star Realms, but I don't own a physical copy of it anymore. The thing is, Star Realms, the digital game, does all the shuffling for you. And you may think that's not a big deal, but if you're not prepared for a deck builder game, you might be unprepared for this. In Star Realms, you will be shuffling a deck of cards that ranges from 7 to 8 cards to 20 to 30 cards every few turns. What's more, to set it up, you need to take a deck of 100 cards and shuffle it. And when you're going to be looking at it in chunks of 4, it can feel very obvious when you didn't do a very good job of shuffling it. It feels a bit silly pointing out such a small pragmatic concern, but if you're inclined to giving this kind of game a shot, try it out digitally first. But what if you do like Star Realms and you want more of it? Well, good news, the folks over at Whatever Wizard have decided to keep making it. And keep making it, and keep making it, and look, there's a lot of Star Realms, and while that includes things like a solo campaign and a cooperative box and a whole store, all the stuff form and missions and legacy versions and random events and commanders for those of you who are Elder Dragon Highlander brained out there, but it also has a notable expandalone called Star Realms Frontiers. In Star Realms Frontiers, you get 4 players worth of starting cards, a buy deck that isn't just a copy of the base game buy deck, but it isn't a straight up upgrade over it either, a lovely white box, and then you also get a set of campaign and challenge cards to go with it. Still, with more cards comes more variety, and that does mean you have more chances for the deck to poop on you and give your opponents great options while it gives you a butts-a-clock visit. That's a bummer, but by dint of being short and fast, the game is something where a bum draw sorts itself out over time, and even if it doesn't, you can lose, and then move on to the next game. It's fine. This is a game where you're going to win or you're going to lose. You're never going to draw. Speaking of draw, what about drawing things out? Do you ever find yourself doing this thing in games where you can end them, where you know the game is done, but you keep doing things that let you keep playing? I'm not talking about games like Skyrim, where there's a whole instrumentation of the game being built around giving you more varieties of things to discover, and where you can break the game apart into lots of smaller chunks of game experience. In that case, you could view the game at large as an archive, where the conclusion, the end of the game, is just one unimpressive tome in the whole arrangement of these things. But where the driving play experience you focus on is instead all the stuff that builds up to that point, the stuff that you choose to focus on that you enjoy. Nor do I mean something like Minecraft, where the game's end is very superficial and expects you to return to the play experience over and over and invent your own new reasons to want to keep engaging with it. They're not unrelated kinds of experiences, but I really am referring to something I've noticed in myself when dealing with Star Realms. In Star Realms, I've noticed that I often find the game ending 1 or 2 turns before I wanted it to. What's more, I noticed this because the game's interface was changed to make it so you could no longer accidentally end the turn when you had lethal damage, and fail to attack your enemy with it. With the default button on the interface, if you have enough damage in your hand to win the game, you can't just pass. You need some reason, something to make a choice about, or to pull open the menu to finish the turn and let your opponent survive for another turn. When I found myself doing this, I usually attributed it to some secondary goal, some greater challenge the game had not assigned me. It's not uncommon in this game to set things up so that your opponent has to discard one of their 5 cards every turn. If you thin your deck out right and get the right pieces, you can make them discard 2, or 3, or more. If you're following me, then that means, you can get them to discard 5 cards and start their turn, throw their whole hand in the trash, then pass it back to you, having done nothing. And if you keep slimming your deck down, you might be able to do that every turn. Thing is, the way the game is set up, if you've got a deck that does that, you've also got a deck that can kill them. You have a very hard time getting this kind of effect without also getting stab you in the face levels of damage. You're only going to do this if you aim for it. You don't loop it with a hapless opponent frustratedly throwing out their hand because the cards that let you do this are also the cards that let you kill your opponents. They're not dedicated to the purpose of killing time and depriving your opponents of choices, but instead do that while advancing a game plan of killing your opponent and depriving them of choices. This is a good thing. It's not that do-nothing cards that just prolong the game are bad per se, but it often makes me wonder if the game, in this particular difficulty, is over-tuned for me. Tabletop games often have this feeling to me where I just start getting to do the thing I enjoy, but oh, no, oops, doing that thing involves ending the game really abruptly, or running away with an advantage, and that makes it so other players realize what's happening and either surrendering or stepping up their game to try and finish the game with me. Which, reasonable, I don't want to keep them there if they're not having fun, but also, dang it, I was having fun. This impulse to keep the game going doesn't seem to be entirely situated in this game, but it's definitely something I notice when I have more time to play games with more freedom to them. Just to be clear, there's no wrong way to play. I'm noticing this pattern of behavior not in myself to judge anyone for doing it, but to document it and consider how I can avoid creating it in players. I've talked in the past about on-ramps in games, where you just having a basic idea of here's how to start can be amazingly powerful. Whether the hold down right or the elf ranger type combination systems can be used to seen as ways to induce players to keep playing with the stuff that's presented to them. It presents a question of enrollment. What does your design do that players like to see happening? It's sometimes described as the mid-game, which is funny because I think it's really good, where the players have resources enough to enjoy deciding how those resources are used, where they're no longer trying to get started and more involved in the experiences of seeing results to their play choices. And am I making sure that engagement happens at the right time and in the right way? I have about 499 hours logged on Star Realms. By the time I'm done recording this video, it'll probably be 500. Thing is, that's after not playing the game at all since 2023. I saw my time racked up on it and I pointedly uninstalled it to move on to other games because I had other games I wanted to play. But I still owe Star Realms an enormous debt because just the way it worked showed me the kinds of things of the large scope you could fit in a single deck game of only 100 cards or so. Fundamentally, Star Realms is why I was able to make games at all. I saw it while in a university class, and then I had the idea of trying to replicate what it was, and then came up with my own thing. Middleware, a cyberpunk cooperative deck builder for people who hadn't played a deck builder before. Making promotional material for Middleware is part of what got me here, on YouTube. Star Realms doesn't need me, of all people, to give it any flowers. It's a fantastically successful piece of media in its own right. It has had multiple Kickstarters, and it is indeed overseen by some people who are themselves very well respected in the card and board game communities, including the Magic the Gathering Pro Circuit. Still, it feels right to mention that I owe this game so much fun and so much joy, not just as a player, but as a creator.